Hello and welcome to a year of Goddess Magic for May. I am Molly Reamer with 30 Days of Goddess and Bridget's Grove. Our goddess that we are honoring this month is Gaia. And our theme for this month is Flourish. And I will tell you that my own personal Omen Days theme for May was Nourish. And our theme last year, not for May, but for the summer, was also Nourish. So I've got Nourish and Flourish both floating around in my brain this month. And I think obviously, we need both. We need things that nourish us and we need to flourish. And we want to be rooted in landscapes of belonging and connection that both help us to flourish and that nourish us, and that we can nourish as we help other people to flourish. So flourish and nourish are holding hands today, this month, this year, both important concepts. So before we actually begin, I'm inviting you to take a nice deep breath and settle into your body, into this time and this place where you are right now. Perhaps reminding yourself that you have all the time you need. Please take what works for you, what is nourishing to you, what helps you to flourish from this practice, from this video, and leave the rest. You do not have to do it all. There is no behind and there is no right way. The resources that I create and offer here are intended to help nourish you and to help you flourish and thrive, not to tell you what to do or to shame and blame you for not doing it all. So take a deep breath of acceptance, of grace, of compassion, and of liberation, of freedom. You are allowed to nourish yourself. You are allowed to flourish. Okay, so welcome to this month of practice. And if you head on over to 30daysofgoddess.com, which might be where you're watching this video right now, you will find your companion printables for the month. Everybody gets a little set of snapshot cards to help anchor and ground you into this month of practice. And then if you're a member of the Goddess Magic community on Patreon, which I do invite you to join, you get lots more snapshot cards in different sizes, as well as our Gaia theme packet with a bookmark and ritual guide for this month. So lots of options for you if you head on over to 30daysofgoddess.com. This practice is intended to make space for everyone, and so you always have everything you need for a robust and flourishing month of practice at 30daysofgoddess.com for free. So make sure to check it out. And so there's a lot that I'd actually like to say about this month. And I found myself when I was getting ready to make the video kind of jumping around mentally of like, I could talk about this, and needed to remind myself that I do weekly rituals or returning videos in which I can explore some of these other ideas. So it doesn't have to all be done now. And that's an important thing to keep in mind when we're tending to our own flourishing, is it doesn't all have to be done immediately. It doesn't all have to be done right now. So this theme of flourish really connects well to our theme of healing for April and our theme of restoration for March. So they all kind of build together. Restoration, healing, and flourishing all hold hands. So some questions to consider this month are, what are your sources of renewal? And I know things can feel challenging and unstable and uncertain. I'm watching some hawks right now. That's part of the thing that helps me flourish and thrive, is by noting where I am in my own land and what's happening. And so before I go on with the questions, I'm actually going to say that's one of the core things that I wanted to emphasize, is that May, this time of year, really invites us to consider what is flourishing right where we are. What is flourishing all around us? And that can be things that are flourishing in the land. And I know it sounds kind of weird to say, but I love bearing witness to the things that flourish without tending, the things that I do not need to try to shape or control or prune or water or anything. Just what is flourishing right where I am? What can I just see flourishing right where I am? And this season really invites us to tap into, to tune into, to listen to bear witness to what is flourishing right where we are in our own landscapes of being. But we can extend that outward metaphorically to what's flourishing in our own hearts, what's flourishing in our own communities, what's flourishing in our own lives, what's flourishing in our own work. that's flourishing without a lot of effort? Like, what's flourishing that feels easy? What's flourishing that feels joyful? What's flourishing that feels delighting? What's flourishing that feels whole and healthy and vibrant and powerful? What is flourishing, from your heart into the world? And what is flourishing without taking a lot of effort or force? What's flourishing all on its own? So it can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be physical, it can be the work of your hands, it can be creative, and it can be your own landscape. What's blooming, what's growing, what's flourishing right where you are. So coming back to the questions, what are your sources of renewal? How do you nourish yourself? And remember, most of the time, you do know the kind of nourishment you need. Making space for the nourishment might be a challenge, but you do know at a deep level the kind of nourishment you need. I'm knowing in myself this month, I am needing the kind of nourishment I need is a break from digital consumption and not to not be paying attention, but I need a break from the constant input of other people's concerns and challenges and crises, and I need a break from that sensory onslaught of those things. But also not just those kinds of things, but also just, AI generated pictures of crocheted things that are clearly not made by a human, or AI generated recipes that are clearly not made by a human. And I need a break from the sensory input. So that's one of the source things, the nourishing I need is more time outside with what's happening around me and less time looking at the little screen and seeing things that often aren't real at all. And so that's one of the things to think about with nourishment. What are your doorways to the sacred? What are your doorways to the sacred? My doorway to the sacred is the porch swing on my back deck. That's my doorway to the sacred. My gravel road where I go for walks, that's a doorway to the sacred. Sitting down really and opening my own prayer book or opening my Replenish devotional, those are doorways to the sacred for me. Sitting quietly with my hand on my heart is a doorway to the sacred. So what are your doorways to the sacred? For some people, really find a doorway to the sacred is, joining hands with others in a circle and singing together. That's a doorway to the sacred. That's one of my doorways too. It takes less, it happens less often than sitting on the back porch, but it's a doorway to the sacred. And are you overlooking some of them? Is a doorway to the sacred, that bird nest by your window? Is that one of your doorways to the sacred? And are you too busy to pay attention to it? And so what are you overlooking some of them? And what's already flourishing in your life? What is flourishing around you, both emotional, mental, spiritual, work-based, and landscape-based? What's flourishing around you? What's coming easily for you? What's flowing naturally for you? What's flourishing all on its own? And do you have what you need? Are you open to nourishment from yourself and others? Another thing to keep in mind when tending to our own flourishing is, do you need to, at this time of year, so we're not quite halfway through the year yet, but we're getting there, is it time to reevaluate some of your commitments? Time to let something go, time to pick something up, time to reassess where you are. Is this year holding what you want it to hold? What might you want to change? What might you want to release and let go of? What might you want to pick up and recommit to? So those are the possibilities. So, there's lots of possibilities, but I would like to go ahead and thinking about flourishing, thinking about nourishment, I would like to read a poem to you from the Year of Goddess Magic book. I can't actually pick it up right now because it has other books on top of it, and I have my other little tripod here that I'm experimenting with, and it's in the way, frankly, so I can't get my book, but I can glance over and read it. And I think this is a good reminder for us. So inviting you to place a hand in your heart and listen to this poem. Sometimes we must weave our magic from the smallest scraps we find. Morning glories in bloom by the highway patrol, a soft gray feather on the sidewalk, a waning moon in the sky, sprays of blue chicory in the grass, a child's hand in ours, a field full of sunflowers, an unexpectedly expansive valley view at the edge of a wide parking lot, dogwood berries and standing stones by the medical center, fragments of poems slipping into the windows at red lights and drive-through lines. Pausing to notice any of it, a soft hand against your own heart as you blow a kiss to the sky, taking a moment to be where you are and feel how it all spins, remembering to laugh. It is from small magics such as these that a whole life is made. Be here as often as you can. Be here as often as you can. And that poem was actually written last summer when I was waiting for my second son to pass his driver's test. So I spent more time than I wanted to in the highway patrol parking lot waiting for him to get back. And there was a big lines and there was lots going on. And then he didn't pass the first time or the second time, and there was a lot going on. And so that was a poem written from that experience of finding little bits of magic, little bits of nourishment, little things to help me flourish right where I was, even if it was in the highway patrol parking lot. And so that reminds me that I'd also like to share a quote from that section of this, the Year of Goddess Magic book. And this is a quote from Louis Schwartzberg, who's a nature cinematographer, and he does like they're really beautiful plant wisdom kind of based photography and video documentaries of life and nature kind of like unfolding, but he'll put all the pieces together. It makes, you see the flower bloom or whatever in this patched together photography. I don't know what it's called, but that's what he does. And so he says this: nature freezes us in our path and connects us with something deep within our heart, with a universal vibration that is all about love. The real story of life, and this is what he says, that he was talking about how nature documentaries are often, tooth and claw, and nature's red and tooth and claw, and everything's eating each other and, doing all this stuff. And he says, especially when you're thinking about plants, is the real story of nature is the feminine story, which is symbiosis, symbiotic relationships, mutually beneficial relationships, teamwork, and cooperation. That's how not only ecosystems flourish, but how families flourish and businesses flourish. And that has been the missing story, and that's the story I'm trying to tell. That is the story of life, is a story of coexisting flourishing. And that's how ecosystems flourish, is through cooperation, not through competition and domination and consumption. And so I feel like that is a really useful quote to come back to. So I'd like to go ahead and switch over a little bit and talk about our goddess of the month, Gaia. And there's a lot that I can say about Gaia. And one of the most beautiful and powerful things about Gaia is she's right here, right now. Gaia is not a goddess that you have to seek out or look for symbols of or try to find or try to sense. She's right under your feet right now. Like, we're walking on her. And Gaia is here all the time. She holds us all the time. She is the earth herself. So Gaia is the most tangible, real, contact-based, communion-based, direct touching of the goddess that any of us can experience. She's right here. So the most tangible goddess relationship that we can have in our lives is with Gaia. And so Gaia is the goddess of the earth, but she's the soul. She is Mother Earth herself. She's associated with the life force, with creativity, with the generative principle. She's also associated with healing, abundance, nourishment, and nurturing, with plant and animal life, as well as courage, strength, vitality, and interdependence. She is the great mother of all creation, and she is woven through, around, and she's woven in, around, and through all of life. And so I had a little section I wanted to share with you from this Goddess Path book by Patricia Monahan, which starts out with a section about Gaia, explaining that Gaia goes back to the beginning of all things. I have a cosmology poem, which I don't have handy to read to you right now, but it's basically, in the beginning, there was the original creative impulse that gave birth to all things. Well, that's Gaia. So Gaia goes back to the beginning. The Greeks probably adopted this earth goddess from the people who lived in Attica before they migrated there. She owned a great mountain shrine where a serpent named Python lived. And at the prophetic site, the Sibyl, who was named Pythia after the great snake, there were a whole bunch of them, they're all called Pythias, after the great snake, would inhale sulfurous fumes before speaking in magical phrases about the future. The most famous oracle of the ancient world, Delphi, was Gaia's long before it was overtaken by the interloping god Apollo. They might overtake her sanctuary, but the Greeks could not eliminate Gaia nor her worship. And so they did what conquerors usually do with unconquerable goddesses. They incorporated her into their own mythology, naming her as the most ancient of goddesses, the one who existed before anything or anyone else. And in Rome, Gaia was assimilated also with a native earth goddess, Tellus Mater. And so basically, there's earth goddesses across cultures. There's African earth goddesses. There are Egyptian earth goddesses. There are Sumerian earth goddesses, Mesopotamian earth goddesses. There's Native American earth goddesses. There's earth goddesses everywhere because she is the originator, the beginning of all things is Gaia. And so that is important to remember that, she is here and we are in relationship with her all the time. She is a powerful creator goddess, a parthenogenic mother who can create an entire world without assistance, all knowing. There is perhaps no goddesses in Greek literature with the sheer raw power of Gaia, who stands equivalent to the Hebrew Jehovah, from whom the Christian high god descends, etc. She is the one. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, and then in contemporary science, so the Gaia hypothesis came from James Lovelock. In contemporary science, there's a theory that the earth, soil, water, atmosphere, and living creatures all together is a system so intricate and self-regulating that it can be seen as an enormous conscious living entity. Like, no matter what else you feel, no matter how secular your orientation, no matter how non-religious you are, no matter how practical you are, you can still look at this earth that we live on and see that it is an intricate and interconnected system that in reality is a living entity itself, or a goddess right here, right below our feet. And so James Lovelock called that the Gaia hypothesis. And so Patricia Monahan goes on to say, how fitting that 3,000 years after her worship was suppressed in her homeland, this goddess's name should reemerge to indicate an intuition that the earth is alive and full of enormous generative energy, alive and still as creatively productive as in her primeval youth. And she goes on to say that one of the original symbols of the great cosmic mother that survived through Greek invasion, that survived through 3,000 years, additional years, is, and well, not to mention the fact that earth goddess itself, that figure, those types of figures date back more than 30,000 years, and possibly even further than that, possibly even pre-Homo sapiens, pre-present day people, you can still find evidence of an earth goddess represented. And so she says that the snake is one of the symbols that has survived, and the snake is the ever-renewing serpent is connected to the goddess of the earth. And then she also says that when in worshiping Gaia, the Greeks would leave offerings of honey and barley. So a practice this month might be to leave an offering of honey or barley for Gaia, or any kind of offering to the earth in appreciation and gratitude for all that she has given us and continues to give us. And so I'm going to keep going because there's a lot of great things here. She's talking about suggestions for invoking Gaia, and this connects to our flourishing and our nourishing too, is that she says that a lot of us have grown up with a sense of scarcity, worried about being short of money, love, time, etc. For those on a goddess path, it's important to function from a sense of abundance, the belief that the universe can provide for us and for all of her other children. And failure to believe in an abundant universe is a recipe for becoming stingy and self-centered. For how can we be generous to others when we fear that we ourselves won't have enough? And then she says, and I think this is especially valuable, is that how can we believe in an abundant universe when so much that we hear about seems to point the other way? How can the universe be abundant when there's starvation in so many parts of the world? How can it be abundant when there are so many homeless families? Where is Gaia's abundance when that can happen? But then she points out, and this is really important, this type of poverty is not the earth's fault. For more than 2 decades, wealth in the United States has found its way into the hands of a small privileged class, and the disproportionate amount of wealth is consolidated in the hands of a few. Gaia is not in charge of the distribution of her resources. She creates wealth. She gives to all who ask. So there is enough, but it's human greed that makes it seem like there isn't. And so I think that's important to remember when we tap into this energy of flourishing and nourishing this month, is that we do inhabit an abundant earth. We live in an abundant world, and there is abundant goodness and abundant beauty and abundant magic right where we stand. And so that is important to pay attention to. And then she also talks about, and this is something to continue to think about, that our relationship to nourishing our bodies and our own selves, that might be complicated for women or anybody who has struggled with body-related concept, is that nourishment, the food we take in, is so important. And we sometimes withhold nourishment from ourselves because we're trying to meet some other kind of standard. And so that's like a topic for another day, but it is a useful thing to consider when we're thinking about Gaia. Another practice for this month could be, how do we honor our bodies? How do we nourish our bodies? How do we cherish our bodies? How do we love our bodies and give them what they need? Our bodies are not enemies. Our bodies are not our enemies, and they don't need to be harnessed and disciplined and shamed and controlled. Like, our bodies are oracles of wisdom and important teachers and important sources of wisdom. So lots more we could go into there, but we're already at the 20-minute mark, and I got a little off. This is a little different than some of my videos because I got really into the Gaia subject instead of talking about that many other things. And so anyway, but I hope that gives you food for thought about nourishing and about flourishing and about trusting yourself and about taking time to tap into your own landscape of flourishing and thriving and your own relationship to this sacred earth we all share, that we all inhabit, this goddess right below our own feet. And so I'm going to go ahead and close with one of our prayer cards for the month. And so inviting you, if I got a little too far with my Gaia wisdom, inviting you to take another deep breath. Resettling into yourself, into this ground of being, this love, this field of belonging, this ground of love that holds you, that nourishes you, that carries you, that feeds you, that supports you. Settle into that ground of love, that field of belonging, and receive this little message/prayer. Allow today to be a special day. Invite wind to dance with you. Welcome sun to shine on you. Root into the rhythms and the teachings of this land you walk on. Open up to love, to peace and trust, to gratitude and delight. Listen to yourself. Grant yourself what it is you need to flourish. Notice it is often much simpler and more accessible than you think. This is your rightful state of being, inhabiting center, embodying magic. And the affirmation is, I am rooted in love. So may you flourish this month. May you nourish yourself well and wisely. May you trust that you know the kind of nourishment you need. May you nourish the people and places around you. And may you celebrate, cherish, and depend on that sacred ground beneath your feet. Thank you so much for being here. Keep living your magic, everybody. Bye-bye.